Friends, blessings and good morning. We are in the month of January and we have been asking this question about newness and how is God making things new. And I was reminded of our recent sermon series that the church went through in our conversations from the Sermon on the Mount found in Matthew chapters 5 through 7. And I'm particularly struck by what we understand as a collection of Jesus' greatest teachings and greatest hits because it's the emphatic introduction to the glaring issue and motivating task at hand for Jesus, named by the prophets years before Jesus' coming. The glaring issue that says, we are doing this whole human thing maybe wrong, especially if we're going to call ourselves righteous, pious peoples. We're just not doing it right. And we hear this sentiment from Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount that he has not come to abolish or even change the law. He's actually come to fulfill it. That he's come to live out the right way of being human in its fullness, this new way, as we might call it. Because this old way of living and this old way of being human has not worked. It may look like it has worked for some because some live in comfort and prosperity, but Jesus is concerned with those who have been left poor, the meek, the persecuted. And they have been cast to the margins, cast aside, and perpetually treated as the needy objects and recipients of charity only because of religious law. So this old way of being human and fulfilling the law that has included taking the Sabbath, caring for the widow, the sick, and the orphaned is still not the way that Jesus has called us to live into. Rather, this new way and what our pastors and what Jesus was teaching on of being human, this new way of being human calls for a complete reorientation, a new vision of understanding the hierarchy of the kingdom. Because if there even is one in hierarchy in the kingdom, it is not those who deem themselves righteous and pious for upholding the letter of the law that will find themselves atop the kingdom, but those who have long suffered within the misappropriation and abuse of the law and life that Jesus lives us into, they are the blessed in the kingdom. This new vision and new reorientation that Jesus invites us into is one that transforms caring for the widowed and the sick from caring for the needy to caring for the blessed. Caring for the needy to caring for those who we might recognize Jesus is most concerned with. Those who were most close to Jesus in his time here, and caring for those who just might most clearly know Jesus. And I think this is easier for us to see and recognize this kind of reorientation when I think about why it is that we see students returning from service learning trips with a reinvigorated motivation to live into their faiths, to persist in their heart for service. They are taking part in restoring the results of broken societies and systems. Some the result of a broken society and system caused specifically by a religious institution such as the Christian church. And these students are partnering alongside Jesus in living out the exact teaching that we find in the Sermon on the Mount. But unfortunately, I also think that this is why I see students returning from these trips and months after returning to their established rhythms, continuing to live into their prior ways of being and finding it challenging to connect to God in the same ways they connected to God through the people they served. Far removed from having to see the consequences and experiencing the consequences of the ruptured kingdom, we are also removing ourselves from the work of restoration. But when we are able to, and when we do reorient and restore our God-crafted hearts towards this new way of being that fulfills the law, the way that Jesus teaches in the Sermon on the Mount and lived out himself throughout his life, when we do reorient and restore our hearts towards this new way of being, we not only find further restoration of the broken kingdom, but we find restoration of our individual lives towards the way that Jesus has called us to be. And we too can be blessed. I'd like to invite us to consider the ways in which the orientation of our hearts may be stuck in this old way. and instead look to Jesus to learn what this new way of being, this new way of being human might entail. Blessings all and have a great rest of your day.